So we were hearing about coal mining. People concerned about coal mining in Alberta.
On what's called the Eastern Slopes.
And
We were just 15 minutes ago. So.
yeah. And somebody had asked me recently, how many people, how many human beings are going to have to die in order to mitigate the climate crisis problem and stuff like that, so that the rest of the animals and plants will live. And I gave them an answer. Well, if you're thinking of sacrificing yourself to COVID, you obviously care about the environment, and the environment needs you. So if everyone who sacrificed themselves for the environment, everyone who cared about the environment did that, then all that would be left would be the people that will turn everything to dust. So so that was basically my answer for them. But since we're talking about coal mining on the radio today, there's obviously a lot of people are wondering about this sort of thing, because with since we're getting away from using oil for fuel and natural gas and stuff like that, well, Canada is not going to be very habitable for a lot of people unless you use some other form of energy for heating your homes. And I mean, we've already wiped out a lot of trees, so burning wood for fuel to try to keep yourself from freezing in the winter might not work out great.
And believe me, there are lots of places in the world, so-called third world countries,
where they're still doing that.
Where they're,
And
I refuse to call Jordan a third world country.
If people are, like, I'm seeing so many things that used to have a cord on them, now converted to battery. For some reason, I remember my ex, he wanted a skill saw with a battery rather than a cord, and I was like, why? We live in town. Use an extension cord or whatever. Like, what do you need that for? And I feel the same way. I bought a skill saw with a battery, and I wish I hadn't. What do you do with all those batteries? Eventually they run out and you need to recycle them or whatever, and that's going to cause a serious environmental problem. So all of the people out there who are going, oh yes, solar power, batteries, this is so great. No, it's not. It's not environmentally friendly. And so anyway, we're hearing about coal. Well, that's where the energy is going to come from. It is. It's where a lot of it comes from now. And so with more people being brought into Canada, there's too many people in Canada for our environment,
resources.
Our agricultural resources,
and frankly for our environment.
Yeah, there's too many. So why are more people immigrating into Canada? We don't have enough resources for the ones that we have. And everybody's talking about okay, so first thing first, James, before they started using oil and natural gas and stuff like that, what was the population of the world when they were using coal? And I guess steam.
Well, I mean, oil, natural gases, it might be since World War II.
Yeah.
But it would be, in 1960, the population of the world was roughly 3 billion. It's 8 billion now. That's in 2 generations. I
know, but it's been longer than that. Like, just think about before, like when coal was
the go-to sort of thing for heating?
Yeah, for heating.
It might be 1 billion people.
1 billion people. So if you look into what the world's population is now and compare it to that, that's how many people are going to have to die. To be frank, just to
billion.
put it out there.
Just to put it out there.
Yeah. So
So you want to go back to the ancient times? It's like Pauline said. Are you going to sacrifice yourself for the environment and for everyone else and for your children? Are you going to kill yourself?
So, really, the only thing that people should be talking about when they're talking about sustainability is population control. That is it. That is number one. That is the only one.
That's the only one. Do we have a sustainable population at
So,
8 billion? Absolutely not.
If you
I don't
are
know
a
if a
person
billion is sustainable.
who cares about the environment, you have only had anywhere from 0 to 2 children. That is it. If you care about the environment, you don't have more than 2 children, because 2 is the replacement factor for you and your spouse. That's it. That replaces you. And if you are an environmentally minded sort of person, you really should have 2 children.
Or less.
Yeah, but I really believe otherwise there's nobody who cares about the environment. If you don't reproduce yourself, if you don't teach somebody who thinks like you do, raise somebody who thinks like you do, then who's left?
You're right. I mean, people.
Yes. So if you care about the environment, you're like, I'm not going to have any children. Well, that's like the Shakers. Where are the Shakers now?
They were celibate.
Yeah.
I believe it was the Shakers. And
I guess I should have
kids.
explained that,
Well,
because people probably don't know who the Shakers were
Many
or
people
what they
would.
stood for. Okay. But anyway, so and with everybody else, you have to make sure that they don't have more than 2 children. Because if they have the right to have 10 children, many of them will. And then where will we be? So,
well,
as for
in the
COVID,
toilet.
I'm hearing so many people have flip-flopped on the radio about so many issues. It's I was at the beginning of this whole COVID thing, I was talking about 1984, and I wonder if the general person, member of the public out there, is really paying attention to what's being said and who's saying the things. And we had a couple of years ago people on the radio talking about how the flu doesn't spread through children, so they didn't have to worry about the children. And I was listening to that going, what? You know, they're like little germ magnets. Like
was
they're
this before COVID then?
This was when it was starting to kick off. They were not worrying about the children because it doesn't spread through them.
So they weren't.
Kids don't
They
spread
weren't
the flu.
worried about them dying from it, but also
They
not
weren't worrying
being
about them
spread.
spreading.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's all of this stuff now that is coming out, like for a long time there. I think we're still doing it this last school when they were thinking of sending the kids back to school in September, weren't they? They were saying, oh, well, we have a pandemic of depression. You know, it's we really have to worry about, there's so many children that
Committing suicide.
Yeah, they're so depressed. We need to make sure we send them back to school because the contact with other people, they need that, and they miss being around their friends. They miss being at school. And James and I were like, did you ever miss going back to school? Did you ever want to go back to school? I mean, no matter how short the holidays were or how long they were, you didn't want to go back. Like I didn't.
I started to get, speaking of depression, not depressed, but down.
At the end of August. At the end of August for summer holidays.
When it was halfway through.
Totally.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
With Christmas and Easter, those, as I recall, tended to be, maybe still are, well, not now with the,
Yeah.
but it used to be 10 days. After the 5 days, of half of it, the 5 days were done, I started to feel down.
I started feeling down right away. Like it was like a couple days in and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to go back.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So, it was, as soon as August hit, I can remember the Calgary Stampede used to be maybe, well, it was, I actually got down once the Stampede was over. That's well
And
before.
James was
Well
listening to the
before
radio.
August.
It was a while ago. There was a little girl that was going back to school.
Getting
and they-
ready to go back to
Yeah,
school.
and the radio
Can I
interviewer.
kind
Yeah,
of
you
do
say it. You do it.
Because I heard it.
Yeah.
So they were interviewing parents and kids. Now I wish it was the other way around. And this is the way I'm going to present it. They interviewed one little girl. I think she was in grade 1. They're both in grade 1.
Yeah, that's what you said.
So this is the start of something like a second semester. You've already got half a year. So the second one they interviewed. Oh yeah, she's all keen to go back. I don't know if she really is or if she's that way for the camera. And the parents of both kids, they want to get the kids back. You know, they don't want to be responsible for daycare, either paying for it or providing it themselves. Because I suspect both the parents work. Okay, but the first kid they asked, like it's one of these CBC fake left journalists, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing the bidding of Jason Kenney and stuff like that. Anyway, they asked this little girl. Now they've done a pre-interview, kind of the way they do on game shows and stuff like that. They've already been selected to present the positive side of things. This is the thing to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, honey. Or honey, I think was the what? Are you looking forward? How are you feeling going back to school now? Bad. So here's
What
a little
sweet little
6-year-old.
girl.
Yes. Oh my heavens! I was really regretting not having a child then, because that's a child after my own heart. She's telling the truth. And they weren't expecting it. And I didn't hear it at first too. I wasn't expecting it as well. And so they said, "What's that, honey? What'd you say?" and they would say, "Oh, come on now. When we interviewed you before, you see, they screamed. Weren't you thrilled about seeing Lois?" I think it was Lois. Louise, I think it was Lois. It basically means the same thing. It's Ludwig. It's horrible word. It means
great
famous
name for a
in
girl.
victory or
But
something in
anyway.
battle. But here's the thing. They followed.
Yeah.
Weren't you looking forward to when we were interviewing earlier, not on air? Weren't you saying you were looking for? Yeah. And then they said, "So what else are you looking forward to about school?" Going home. You
it didn't work
fake
out for
left-wingers on CBC.
Wouldn't have aired it live.
What was that?
They wish they wouldn't have aired it live.
Yeah,
moment,
exactly
I guess,
right.
yeah.
But that's
They
the
didn't
thing.
screen
Some
quite well
truth telling. Kids are going to tell the truth
Yeah.
many times.
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Um,
And that's one of the best truth telling, because it's a documentary working against itself.
Yeah.
I love it.
and
Kids don't want to go to school.
No. So anyway, we were hearing on the radio today. I don't know what time it was, maybe 9 or 10. There was somebody who had studied depression, and they were looking at the stats for 2020, and it turned out that the suicide rate
Can I present it? The suicide rate went up minus 30.2%. No, why did I put a minus?
32%.
It dropped. Now,
Yeah.
understand, I might have misheard it. Is that roughly what you
That's
would do?
what I heard.
Because
So,
I'm going to say, maybe we should say 3.2%,
so
because
it
we
went
might have misheard.
down. It went
Whatever the
down.
case may be, the suicide rate went down. And what I heard was significantly, 30.2%.
So even
or
if it went up
32%.
in 2021 from
We
2020,
don't know. I doubt if they've done the study.
Yeah, even if it did though, it would have to go up more than 32%.
in order for it to go up
be
from the beginning
zero
of the...
from last year. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
exactly. Yeah.
So
It would have to go up
this
roughly
healthcare
30%.
politician line that, oh, we got to send the kids back to school because they're so depressed and whatever. You know
Full
what?
gaucherie, you lying
that's a lie.
louts.
And the fact of the matter is, if, like, I'm feeling lonely. I'm lonely. I'm depressed, about COVID, whatever. James depressed about COVID. You know why?
I'm stressed. I don't get
Because
depressed by anything.
the politicians aren't shutting it down. They're promoting it. That's what makes me depressed. It makes me very sad to see that. Hi, little guy.
Hey, we got a fan here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We usually do. They come
little,
out.
what was that,
they like
chickadee?
to see what we're eating. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one was a chickadee.
Making some lovely little sounds
love
there.
him.
I
Sweet
feel like
little
applauding
angels.
him,
Yeah.
Wonderful. Should turn the camera around on him. Yeah, he's busily working away on a branch there. I don't know. Is he sharpening his bill or something like that? Oh, yeah. It does my heart good.
And
yeah.
well, they were talking about the environment on the radio and stuff like that too. And it's like, in a year where they shot a whole bunch of bears for coming into town
I
because they
think it
were
was 17.
starving.
17. I don't know where exactly it was. It
think
was
it was
here in
in
Alberta,
BC,
I'm pretty
wasn't
sure. Banff, maybe? What was that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Jasper.
I thought it was BC. I thought it was
Okay,
in-
yeah, that's right. It was BC because it had the big drought there, the heat dome.
But I mean, it was hard here for animals too. We're seeing a lot of deer and hobbling
That's maybe
around.
why the birds have been...
And the birds.
It sounds
been
as though they're celebrating, but
more
I think they're...
eager for me to give them food.
Yeah,
than-
there's a
Well, they
couple
always
of them,
like
or at least one. Maybe it's just one just flying back and forth.
But we saw so many birds, like baby birds, dying this winter or this summer.
Oh, I was off.
It was terrible, and the fish died, and God, it was a terrible time. So it was a hard time for, it's a hard time for the animals now, right? They had a bad summer, now they're
Oh, it's
having
it's,
to
it's
deal
worse
with
now
the winter,
because
right?
food
it's-
is getting
And,
used up.
Yeah, so things aren't good for them right now. But I mean, to have one has to keep a broader perspective on things and not look at this and go, oh, this is global warming, this is climate crisis. It's 1 year, so we'll see what happens next year, the year after, whatever. But the thing is we really have to plan for these kind of things.
Like COVID,
and-
you mean?
Like COVID. We have to plan for things and react accordingly. So we don't just wait for things to become a crisis. We should try to make sure that things don't become a crisis. So,
Well, we've got to get a plan that works. They actually had a
Yeah,
plan. Their plan was to, the next thing, H1N1 really threw them for a loop because that was something like 2009. And it ended up being maybe not much worse than the flu. And
Yeah,
that's
I know.
why we were hearing this trope, oh, COVID's not much worse than the flu. And they'd actually decided that they were going to let it, let us get herd immunity to it, not overreact to
but
it.
nobody's going to get herd immunity.
You don't get herd immunity to the flu. You don't get immunity to the flu. If there is something like that, it's over the course of many generations. So yes, the Spanish flu impacted indigenous groups up in the north that hadn't been exposed to flu going back 10,000 years and stuff like that. Groups on South Sea Islands where they actually allowed travel in and out were affected more severely. In certain South Sea Islands, one of them, American Samoa, no one died because they didn't let anyone in. That was over 100 years ago. They figured it out, but we, with 100 years more experience and all our education, we couldn't figure that out. Anyway, sorry for interrupting.
There's a whole bunch of them now.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that there was more than one.
Yeah.
Are you going to turn the camera over there on them?
No.
Or are you just checking the
I'm
time?
just telling
There,
you that
I'm
you have
telling
10
you.
minutes to review your
There we go.
books.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to talk more about
I
COVID.
wanted to talk more about...
You did. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, global warming is happening, from what I can tell. And it is serious. But that's United Nations said a while back, within the last couple of years or so, 70% of global warming is caused by overpopulation. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Eh? Put that in your hash pipe and smoke it, you faux gauchis, you fake left-wingers. You cannot be an environmentalist and not be primarily concerned about overpopulation. Sustainability is the problem, and you can cut back on various sorts of technologies and their application, mass application and stuff like that. All you're doing is requiring people to share your poverty of imagination. Imagine this. This is one of your favorite words, you faux gauchis. Imagine, reimagine. You'd better start reimagining really quickly and imagining stuff that actually works. You can cut back coal, use of coal for heating, stuff like that. You can cut back the use of coal for developing steel and that sort of stuff. And what'll happen is people will be freezing in the cold and the dark, and they won't have cars to drive around. Now, am I being hypocritical and stuff like that? You start looking in a mirror, dude, and dudess. Because I got my first car when I was 56 years old. And I'd walk and I'd run pretty well everywhere. If I had to go across a big river, it's about a mile wide, not the river, but the valley, and it's 300 feet deep. That's 100 meters deep. And not so bad when you're going down, but coming up, it's a bit of a problem. So yeah, I take the bus. But almost everywhere else, like every day I'd go to work, it's usually I'd run down. This is before I started working in public operations, but I run down a mile and a half. And then I work, I was on my feet, I do janitorial, and usually it was more than the 8 hours. I'd give them free overtime, my bosses, and stuff like that. So I'm not being hypocritical. Most of you flunkies out there couldn't do without your car. What you're doing is asking everybody to share your poverty of imagination. You know? Let's all get poor now. Yeah, see if you can get people to go along with you. But, you know, there's going to be people freezing in the cold and dark. What we need is sustainability. You're all talk about sustainability, but you don't understand it. We do not have a sustainable population. And here you're screaming and squawking about having open borders. And I want to talk about the Eastern Slope. They had someone on CBC, and someone who has a legitimate concern, someone who sounded as though they were Blackfoot ancestry. And they were saying they had sacred sites up there and stuff like that. So we open up the borders, keep them open, and let people flood in. How's that going to help the Blackfoot out? How is that going to help? People are coming here. We keep on there. They want to improve their lives and stuff like that. Is that going to improve the lives of the Blackfoot here? Is that going to improve the lives of everyone who's sharing the same pie, but there's more pieces being cut out of that pie? You know, it doesn't really work. Did you guys take any economics when you were going through university, or was it all sociology and anthropology? You stupid buffoons. The earth is a zero-sum game. It's a big pie, and not everyone, there's some people who are responsible, but almost everyone out there is having too many kids, and what they want to do is, hey, you know, give us our pieces of pie. It doesn't work out that way. Because ultimately, the pieces of pie will get too small. And people will be living poorer and poorer and poorer.
Yeah. And so, with only 1 billion people on the planet, even still, the environment would suffer.
If we
Because
maintain
if
the same
we-
level of technology.
Yeah, because I mean, they were seeing that what the life expectancy of work. I think it was factory workers in England. Wasn't it something like 20?
It could have been. We
Was
don't
not
know.
very old.
I'd be a little bit suspicious of the studies. You know, like was that due to the factory work, or was it because they were living in places where there was heavy pollution? I think it was John Ruskin who wrote an essay about air pollution.
Well, I think it was the pollution.
It would be any variety of things.
Yeah, I
People
guess
were
you're right.
dying,
It's hard to-
being worked to death. They were. I don't know if they were worked 16 hours a day, but 12 hours a day, stuff like that. They were using kids. They were breathing. There'd be in the textile factories. There'd be gunk in the air, right? The raw materials in the air, and I gather it was bad for the lungs.
And well, I don't think, like they were talking about, the cattle grazing in the foothills and that. Well, that's got to stop. Honestly, there's too many people for people to be grazing cattle and eating cattle. It's just, there's too many people.
Stop eating meat. All you
so
environmentalists, how many of you are eating meat?
You may be caring about, I want to continue with my lifestyle of being a rancher in the foothills. You can't. It's just not sustainable. So if you're going to get up on a soapbox on the CBC and talk about sustainability of coal mining, let's talk about those cattle.
Now understand though, the Indigenous woman that they had on there, she has lots of issues that are legitimate, right?
I know.
It's the announcement.
But I've heard from so many people who ranch, keep cattle, and they're like, well, they just replace the bison or the buffalo, and it's like, well, then let's replace them back with some wild bison and buffalo. Don't give me that argument.
Buffalo, newsflash for flunkies like that. The ranchers are one thing, but what I was hearing about, they're having trouble with feedlots, like keeping them going here. It was one enterprise. I think they were saying they needed 70 semis worth of feed every day. Now, I think I got that. I might have got that wrong. But they asked, what's the population on your spread? Not a ranch, a feedlot. 28,000. That's a city. 28,000. The buffalo, newsflash, weren't on feedlots.
Yeah. So if you are an environmentalist or claim to be, you don't raise cattle.
You don't raise cattle. You don't eat cattle.
And frankly, you might want to start planting a bunch of berries so that the bears have something to eat. So they're not wandering into cities and eating garbage and not hibernating and starving to death in the winter.
Yeah, actually, they should be feeding those bears because what they're going through isn't natural. Heat domes and stuff like that.
All right. Well, done enough.